Hey everyone, super interesting chat today as we dive into the world of security and surveillance and cyber resilience with Axis Communications. Fredrik, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me, Evan.
Well, thanks for being here. Really intrigued by the mission of you and the team. Maybe start with introductions to yourself and what's the mission at Axis around a smarter, safer world?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Fredrik Nilsson. I'm VP for the Americas of Axis Communications. We're a global company, 1.7, 1.8 billion in revenue last year. Celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, so founded in
Wow.
1984. And in 1996, Axis was the inventor of the world's first IP camera that transmitted video over the IP network instead of analog.
Mm.
Entered the world of security by 2000 and has now grown to be the world market leader in IP cameras and getting close to 2 billion selling that and other devices as well.
Fantastic. So we're all familiar with IP cameras, but what does it mean at a day-to-day level? What is your go-to-market and value proposition exactly?
So great question. As we all know, unfortunately, there is security needed in the society, and the more you can move over to technology instead of using man guards and monitoring centers, the more efficient it will be. And with the advent of IP cameras, some 25 years ago, moving away from the analog, all of a sudden systems can become more scalable. The image quality could be better, the resolution could be better, and you can start to build local intelligence in the cameras as well. So
Mm.
systems that used to be 50 cameras today are 500, and large airports have 5,000, and large
Mm.
retailers with a couple of hundred cameras per store and thousands of stores, it's obviously in the hundreds of thousands of video feeds today in some companies managing both the smarter, both the more secure environment for retailers, but also smarter using it for applications such as people counting or heat mapping in stores.
Very cool. And you must have some great anecdotes and stories around how you're helping improve safety and security. Care to share any of those stories, or customers or scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, once you get into this field, and I'll challenge you, Evan, as well as you're traveling, which I know you do quite a bit, start looking around for cameras and spot cameras because they're absolutely everywhere, whether it's on highways, making traffic more efficient, whether it's on airports, making security more efficient as well, but also using at airports for air traffic control to monitor gates and things like that with a high resolution, especially multi-sensors cameras today
Mm.
to route planes back and forth, and also being able to do virtual control towers at airports for managing schools safety as well, and also make sure that no kid is wandering around in the hallways when they should be in class. And also, as I mentioned before, retail, not only for inside of the stores, but also outside of the stores in the parking lot. People forget where they park their cars. Sometimes there's some guests that have a history of not paying when they go in, and they monitor the license plates there and so forth. So there's a multitude of applications. And with the quality of the cameras and also the local intelligence of the camera, the metadata, there's just more and more and more applications all the time, every day. And hence one of the reasons why we and the whole industry is growing quite rapidly.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating industry as a techie, IP cameras. But what really got my interest, and I asked you to come on the show, was talk about how AI is shaking up the security and surveillance space. So many obvious applications, but what are the big game changers, the big changes that are happening with AI these days?
So it's a great question. It's really been a little bit of the holy grail in the security industry for a long time. So go back a long time at 9/11, and there was a lot of airports interested in facial recognition for the security of passengers and finding people that had bad intent at airports, and that showed to be too many false alarms. And
Mm.
if you have an airport like Logan with, I don't know if it's 50,000 travelers a day, and you have a 90% accuracy, sounds pretty good, but that means you're miscorrectly identifying 5,000 people a day, and that would not be very scalable. So at that time, people trying to do more and more intelligence in the cameras, but the processing power was not really there. The image quality was not really there, but it progressed over the year. The big kind of divider that happened, and this is 2, 3, 4 years ago only, is once we and other companies were able to put deep learning, So specific processing, kind of GPU similar processing out in the camera to do more accurate analytics.
Wow.
That is really when it took off, because now we have much higher accuracy for all kind of object detection, whether it's people or cars or animals, or if people stand up or lay down, or colors of clothes and so forth, to feed metadata into other system from all those cameras. So as much as we talk about analytics and AI over the last 20 years, over the last 2-3 years, it's really starting to happen and provide solutions for a lot of applications out there. So it's a very exciting time.
It is. And at the same time, you have to balance all that cool tech and innovation with data protection, data privacy laws, local, federal, state laws. Each country has their own set of laws, as you know. How do you manage that balance when it comes to
So privacy
privacy?
has been a challenge or for security and video security for a long time. And that's why we have implemented features such as privacy shield. So you can decide,
Mm,
either you can mask out certain areas of the video. So if you have a stadium, but you have condos on the side, you can mask out so that piece of the video is not shown to anyone. You can also have what we call a light privacy mask, where the cameras detect faces and blurs the faces as well. If you just want to make sure people go through a security line, but you don't want to identify them, or if you want to use them for an application in the store to take care of customers, but the staff doesn't want to be recognized
mm,
on the video, or vice versa, you can do those things as well. So privacy has been a big deal, and different countries have different privacy laws. There's also a lot of privacies when it comes to AI. The AI you're using in the camera, how has it been trained? What kind of data has it been trained on? And can you guarantee, especially if you go into the era of facial recognition, that there's no racial or gender bias in this data as well? So that's where there's been a lot of legislation, both the AI Act in Europe, as well as legislation in California and some here in Massachusetts as well, against facial recognition based on bias and those things. So there's a lot of
mm.
regulation for us to kind of relate to in this industry.
I bet. And there is a move towards more predictive, proactive security strategies. It sounds like something out of science fiction, but this is becoming reality. What does that mean for you exactly in your products and roadmap?
Yeah, what it means for us, we're investing a lot. So we invest 15% of revenues. That's around 300 million a year. We have 2,500 engineers just doing a lot of cool
Wow.
things and developing our own processors to get the performance we need, to get the AI we need, to get the cybersecurity we need in security cameras. So there's definitely a lot more opportunity to provide better, as we say, innovating for a smarter, safer world by using all this data that the cameras are capturing. And that is what we are really excited about. And if you look at the whole security industry today, just look at the Americas as an example, because that's my area of responsibility. In the B2B market, that's the airports, the retailers, the education, so not consumer technology, but in that space, the more professional security space, there's $65 billion being spent or invested by all these
Wow.
companies, airports, retailers, hospitals, cities, to make their environment safer. 80% of that spend goes towards manual labor. That's guards, that's
Mm,
monitoring, that's installation, that's maintenance, because of the complexity of the system, and also a history of not having all the capabilities we have today. If you look at most other industries, and you know the other industry much better, Evan, typically more than half of the spend goes into technology. So we have a long way to go to catch up in the security space, and that's what makes us excited, the opportunity to grow, but also provide more benefits to our customers by the means of the AI and the metadata and everything you can use the video capture by the cameras for. And that's going to be, 10, 15 years ahead of us to kind of get to this point. But it also accelerates the growth in this industry.
I bet. So you got AI and automation hitting the market in a big way. What other kind of technologies are you excited about for this year? I imagine drones and even robotics coming
Yes,
into force.
they're definitely coming into force, drones. And the interesting thing with drones, they can definitely help out, and there is integration of drones into video security systems, but they're also a threat to a lot of places, whether it's airports or large property companies or government facilities or utilities. So we're working with a lot of companies that are using different drone detection technologies that we connect to the APIs of our pan-tilt zoom cameras that can move around and track and find
Mm,
those drones and see if they're friendly or unfriendly drones as well.
mm.
So it's both a great complementary technology, but also a threat to some of those security installs. The other
Fantastic.
the other thing that's actually a nice add-on as well is in the area of law enforcement, it's become not mandated, but more and more popular for the officers to wear body-worn cameras for
Mm.
their own protections and also to do recordings of what happens and use those for evidence and for reports and so forth. And we started to do those cameras a couple of years ago. The interesting thing, we see a lot of applications outside of law enforcement, meaning retailers who want to improve customer service, cruise ships, healthcare, and
Mm.
also the conductors on trains, because sometimes some customers might not be as friendly as they should be, just as a proof and a part of their own security and also improve customer experience. So that's yet another device that is kind of coming into the whole realm of video security and security in general.
That's
More and more.
wonderful. Yeah, policing is a fantastic area. There was such a big debate about body cameras, and now it seems that everyone realizes the benefits for the public as well as the officers.
Yeah.
And I spend hours looking at body camera footage. It's amazing to see what these first responders deal with and their job and how hard it is.
Yeah,
So
so much
I,
respect what they're doing. And it's interesting as well. I talked about conductors on trains, which we're working
mm,
with one of those customers, where the initial reaction from the conductors was, we don't want to have those and being surveilled all the time. It's
mm,
uncomfortable. What value is it from us? And then moving over to their union requiring them to have it because of their own safety and showing that they did everything right. It was the customer who started to argue, and they really tried their best in the situation. And I think the same goes for the law enforcement officer and working with correctional facilities, yes, so they can show that really try their best and do what was right, and here is all the evidence for that.
mm. Wonderful. Um, But yet, when you look at organizations, I talk and deal with large enterprises. Many are still, I don't know, early in this space, or they don't really have a strategy when it comes to video. Why is that? What are some of the barriers or challenges? Is it infrastructure and the network? What
That,
are
that
some of the roadblocks that you have to kind of overcome?
Yeah, that's an interesting reflection. And one of the challenges, this used to be a space where you put it in for, you can use the video surveillance cameras for three different things. You can use them for deterrence, basically saying that this facility has cameras, let's break into the other one that doesn't have cameras. That's kind of one thing. And those cameras were typically large and ugly and looking down at you at the entrance. So, you're under surveillance. The other ones was forensic. Something happened, you can go back and relatively easily find the video footage to see what happened. And the other one is more, as you mentioned before, more proactive surveillance security, where you use analytics and metadata and warn that someone is on the way to break in. So please play an pre-recorded clip on an audio speaker next by and say, hey, this area is under surveillance, please go somewhere else. Then you kind of maximize the use of it. But because this is an older industry where people used to install a little bit more for deterrence, and maybe because of insurance companies required it, a lot of those products have been installed or had the expected life expectancy of not the typical IT equipment of 5 years, but more 7, 8, 10, 12,
Mm,
as long as they could run, or even when they didn't run, they provided some kind of deterrence. And as technology is developing very, very quickly now, it's important to kind of shift over to the latest technology that has the built-in deep learning processing that can do all this AI. And since those cameras started to come out 2, 3 years ago, if you have 7 or 10-year-old cameras, you won't be able to use all the benefits of that for a long time. So back to your question, what is limiting this industry? I think that's the expectation of that you put in security equipment and have it installed as long as it doesn't break down, and don't have an upgrade plan like you have with regular IT equipment, where most of us, your IT department will tell you to update your laptop within 5 years because of cybersecurity, or the switches or the servers in the server room. And data centers, as we know today, with all the big companies building out, they're being teared down and rebuilt every 4 or 5 years to keep up with technology. So this holds us back a little bit, that people install our equipment and it lasts for a long time, but you cannot use the latest technology if you leave it there for 10 years, of course.
makes sense. So when it comes to the small, medium enterprise SMB side of the
Mhm.
equation, Do you work with companies like that, or they seem to be on their own in terms of putting together security solutions, or maybe just going to Best Buy and buying some cameras? Are you seeing service providers or MSPs,
Yeah,
trying to get into this space?
we've seen some come into that space. And one technology that really works well for that space is cloud-based technology, where you, as a
Mhm.
smaller business, don't have to evaluate and buy the latest equipment and then keep it upgraded and figure out how to download the video, but basically buying it as a service because you only have the
Mm.
need for 10, 20 cameras in your facility and you don't want to be bothered by that. And you can buy it from large IT companies that are getting into that space, sometimes in collaboration with us and sometimes with their own solutions. And I think that's a really good way to get the latest and greatest security technology and buy it as a service instead of buying everything up front. Then when you come to a large school district or you come to an airport with thousands of cameras, they typically have a consultants or enough knowledge to kind of evaluate and run their own systems. So there's kind of a two different technologies depending on the size of the market. But like everything else, more and more things move to the cloud. One of the challenge with security with large amount of cameras though is we generate very large amounts of data, so it
Mm.
might become a little cumbersome to upload everything in the cloud if you have thousands of cameras, or very expensive.
I bet. So you're here in Massachusetts, as am I. Beyond thawing out, which we're both looking forward to, the deep freeze here has been pretty rough.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to the rest of the year?
So we have in the security industry, we had the biggest conference in the US and also one of
Mm.
the biggest globally coming up first week of April in Las Vegas, ISC West, and we're going to launch a
Mm.
lot of new products there. So while IP cameras that we invented 25 plus years ago is the biggest part of our revenue. We also have a lot of other IoT devices as well. We have IP-based
Mm.
access control, IP-based audio that is doing really well, where you can do the same both for security and have deterrence by means of pre-recorded voices, or you can do kind of a safety system for evacuation, or you can even do background music and streaming and announcements in stores. We have a lot
Wow.
of products in that space. And then we have IP intercom as well and body worn, as I mentioned before. But what I am looking forward to at ISC West is that we have another 2 or 3 categories of IoT products coming out that we're very excited about the reaction on the market. That's going to make our end customers, whether school or retailers, make their environments even smarter and safer as well.
Wow. Well, on that note, smarter and safer, something we can all get behind. Thanks so much, Fredrik, for joining, and onwards and upwards. Congrats on the success.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Evan.
And thanks everyone for listening and watching. Take care.